Welcome to the Alchemy for Authors podcast. I'm your host, Jo Buer. If you're an author, aspiring author, writer, or wordsmith, you're in the right place. Join me as I chat with authors and industry professionals and share my own experiences with using manifestation and mindset practices to supercharge our writing lives. We'll explore ways to overcome writer's block and imposter syndrome. We'll find motivation and inspiration to get our butts in the chair and our stories written. And most importantly, we'll embark on creating lives and livings doing what we love. If you've ever dreamed of a prolific, wealthy, happy or healthy author career or writing practice, then this show is for you. So let's dive into Alchemy for Authors. Hello, my friends. Well, Christmas is just around the corner, as is 2023. Can you believe it? It really has been another crazy, busy, and unexpected year. One of the things that I've enjoyed most about 2022 has been starting this podcast. Today's episode is episode 43. And I have learned so much, completely pushed myself outside of my comfort zone with creating Alchemy for Authors, and also had an absolute blast in doing so. So I just wanted to let you know that Alchemy for Authors will be continuing in 2023. So you'll still be getting more wonderful interviews from authors and writers just like today, with some solo episodes from me sprinkled in as well. There'll be lots more conversations and tools around mindset, the craft of writing, manifestation, and how to create for ourselves writing lives that we love. However, one thing will be changing. Rather than weekly shows, episodes will be releasing on a fortnightly basis from here on out, so on every other Monday. So that means that the next episode will be released on the 2nd of January 2023. The reason is simply that no matter how much I love this podcast and its listeners, I need to claw back just a little more time for my own writing. And it makes sense, right? I can't very well preach on about writing and publishing those books and all that without actually doing it myself in the background. So I hope you'll continue to listen and support this show. You can subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to this on, or you can sign up to my newsletter so that you're kept in the loop of new releases if you like. And I just want you to know it certainly was a hard decision to make because I really enjoy putting out these episodes weekly, but it is incredibly time consuming. And so I am also really excited to just reprioritize my writing a little more and allow myself that time to get those books written and also to refuel a little bit in between these episodes so I can bring my absolute best to this show. So, on to today's show. I have a wonderful episode lined up for you today. Today's guest is all about ecohappiness, a term that I had not heard up until now. So we will be talking about how to use nature to reduce stress and boost our happiness, productivity, and creativity, which is just perfect for this time of year. So when you are ready, grab a drink, find a comfy chair, sit back, and enjoy the show. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of Alchemy for Authors. Today, I'm talking with award-winning environmental author and freelance journalist, Sandi Schwartz. Sandi's work has been featured in The Washington Post, USA Today, National Geographic, Good Housekeeping, Library Journal, Chicken Soup for the Soul, bobvilla.com, mindbodygreen.com, and more. As the founder and director of the Ecohappiness project, her mission is to inspire and educate families to build a nature habit to feel happier and calmer. Both her parenting book, Finding Ecohappiness, fun nature activities to help your kids feel happier and calmer, and the children's book she co-authored, Sky's Search for Ecohappiness, are available and out in the world now. So, welcome to the show, Sandy. It's so great to have you here.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, from your bio alone, I can see that you are a prolific writer. You're a journalist. I know you've done blogs as well, and you've written 2 books. So, I would love if you could share how your writing journey began.
Yes. Well, I thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer, and that didn't really work out. So I switched gears really quickly. In college, I was an environmental studies and political science major. And then, like I said, I just thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer. And I had my senior year of college. I was actually just telling my son about this because he's a freshman in high school. So I was telling him the importance of internships and jobs when you're young to know what you love and
Yeah.
don't love moving forward. So yeah, I was working in a law firm, a very small little law firm, trademark law, at my senior year of college, and I just did not enjoy it. And then I also took the LSAT, and I just didn't do so well. So I switched gears, and I ended up getting my first job was at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It was like a temporary position for 1 year, like a contract, and that's when my environmental communications journey began because the other person in that same sort of program was more technical and science oriented. So she took all that chemical analysis work, and I was put on the website development team and the team that wrote articles to get published. And you know what? I fell in love with it. And then that sparks the journey of really focusing on the communication.
That's great. That's great. So, had you always wanted to write? Had you always had a little bit of a burning desire to write? Or was it just that you were thrown into having to look after the website and that?
So again, it's funny when I'm talking to my son now and trying to reminisce about my high school experience. It was kind of, a give or take. So on one hand, I could not handle the AP. That's the highest level. I don't know if you have the same level in New Zealand, but AP class, it was an English AP class, I think in 10th grade, but it was all literature focused. And as you'll learn more about me, I'm more of a nonfiction writer and reader. So I ended up dropping out of that class after a few weeks because it was too intense and I just didn't enjoy that. Right. So on one hand, I wasn't like some super duper amazing English major. On the other hand, I was a newspaper editor in high school. I should have thought back then, well, I love the journalism piece. And then it didn't really occur to me again until later on, I guess out of college. I do remember taking a college course. We had some requirements. I took an argumentative essay class and I loved that as well. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily always my dream to be a writer. I know a lot of creative writers who are writing fiction. That's just, you're born with that, capability. For me, it kind of developed over these experiences and different, career opportunities.
That's really cool. And it does always seem, whenever I hear about different authors' journeys and that there quite often are little clues that we don't necessarily pick up on. But just like you said, you were, the editor of your newspaper and whatnot. Yeah, there's those little clues that we get along the way, which is really cool. And so now you have written, so not only have you been a freelance journalist and written prolifically that way, but you've also written 2 books on eco-happiness as well. Can you talk a little bit about the journey to writing those books? Because it's a little bit different than writing articles, right?
Yeah, yes and no. Although I have to
Oh,
say, well, let me back up a touch. So I was at the EPA and then I did some environmental consulting work actually for the EPA. My next job was at the National Academy of Sciences. And I was tasked with taking these very large technical reports and boiling them down to like a 2-page, public document, right? With a lot of bullets. So that's really the most comfortable type of writing for me when I can really synthesize. Like I love the research and then I love synthesizing and organizing research in a, easy to understand way. And of course, my love for the environment has just been there since high school. So I was in Washington, D.C. I had just gotten married. My husband's job took us to Florida. And I was able to hold on to that job at the National Academies for a little bit, like contract wise. And then it kind of fizzled out as time moves on. And then I also was trying to have kids. So I started blogging. So that was a whole new world. It was back then. Oh, what year was that? Oh, around 2007, maybe.
Mhm.
And that blogging was huge. I mean, this is before videos were big, before TikTok or podcasts. And so everyone was blogging. And I got really, really involved with that. And so, long story short, some of the blogs that I had been writing, the blog posts on my own site, and actually some of the articles I had been writing for a variety of parenting type publications, that kind of spurred this idea of, writing the book. So some of the content actually in my book came out of some of that older writing content. And then I updated it and I blew it up into a book. So what I'll say about that is, as a writer, it can be intimidating to have to write a whole book. But if you think about it in these little pieces like blog posts or articles, and you look at each chapter, like I was writing, my goal was to write one chapter a month. And then every day I may have written a section. And so it was like writing an article. So for me, I loved it.
That's a really cool concept. Yeah, I find it really fascinating because I'm just dabbling with the idea of a little bit of nonfiction myself. And so hearing how you kind of break it down like that certainly makes it seem so much easier and less overwhelming than, just looking at the book as a whole, right? So you were doing these blog posts, so you already had a little bit of the information, and then I'm sure you did a lot of research and everything as well. How long did it take for you to write then your first book, the Finding Ecohappiness book?
So it's an interesting question because I was collecting research for, I have to say, at least 2 years. And I was, again, I'm a little type A organized. I would find articles and I would save them in, file folders of my email, which was really great because when it was time to actually write the book, I could go back to all that research and print it out and organize it and all this. Then it was about a year when I forget the moment, I said, oh, I want to write a book. I know that the first idea for the book morphed, it was much broader. And then I kind of morphed it down. I think it wasn't just environmental nature and mental health. It was like all kinds of ideas, mental health, like positive psychology. It was too broad. So I went back to my, my own personal roots of environmentalism and was able to pull that together. But it was about a year from the time I wrote the book proposal and then signed with the publisher.
Wow,
And
that's
then,
relatively fast.
really?
Oh, I don't know. It sounds quite fast to me, I think. Minus like the research and everything, but from writing it to signing with a publisher, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's writing the proposal. So in nonfiction, remember, you only write like 30 pages. You're really outlining what you're going to say. Unlike with fiction, you have a draft.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier because it's not as big of a commitment. Once I had that contract and I was ready to go, I had already written maybe 2 chapters for the proposal because you do need to provide that as well. So once I had that, I had about, I think I had like 9 months, but I was kind of 2 months early on it. And the funniest part was I remember being so excited and I sent it to the publisher. Oh, I'm already done. And he's like, oh, that's so wonderful, but I can't look at it until for 2 more months. And it didn't occur to me that he had all these other books he's dealing with, not just mine.
For sure. For sure. Oh my gosh. So what did you find then was the most challenging part of writing the book or getting the book together or getting it published? Like what was the most challenging?
Of the whole process, the most challenging thing is marketing the book.
Ah, okay.
I loved the research and the writing and the organizing. And also, I was writing it. I signed the contract in June 2020 at the early part of the pandemic in the lockdown. And I was very lucky because it's exactly what I needed to get through the pandemic. I had this amazing project that I could just dive into. My family that summer, my husband and my daughter actually went away for a little while. And so it was just my son and I, and it was so quiet. And I just, every day I wrote and wrote and wrote. And so I didn't have any distraction. So that was a blessing. I can't think of anything that was so terrible. I guess getting people to get back to you that you really want to quote in your book.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah.
That's probably the hardest thing. But I had a lot of incredible interviews throughout the process. So many people contributed.
That's really cool. So did you just reach out via email, or were these people other published authors? Did you have to go through agents, or what was that like, having to get quotes and things like that for your book?
Very easy. A lot of it was just finding people through online research or other authors, like you said, and then just reaching out to them by email. A lot of people are very happy to respond by email. Other times it was, phone interviews. I don't even know if I was using Zoom that much at that point. I feel like Zoom really kicked off a little bit later in the
Yeah.
pandemic. A lot of it also was quoting from other books and authors, because that's, for everyone. I mean, I really felt like my job was to pull together what information was already out there in a cohesive, interesting way, and lots of bullet points.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. And so you said the marketing was a little bit challenging. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, marketing is always challenging and it never ends, right? So I will say the hardest part for me in the whole process, and this book was just released in May, so it's only been a few months, but I had a real, you really build up to that book launch. And I'm sure other authors can relate to this. You build up to it and you're working so hard. I mean, I had booked tons of podcast interviews, just very, very busy. And the day came and it was okay. Like, nobody cares kind of thing, right? Like, I mean, I was on Amazon thinking that I was going to have all this incredible news, or people are going to start calling me on the phone. And the reality is, for most authors, and my publisher warned me, he said, you have to look at it like drip, drip, drip. Put a little bit in your bucket as you go. And there's sort of this falsehood around book launches. And I think we all fall into that trap. So that was in May, the book launch. And then through the summer, I had a real kind of letdown, right? Like, I was feeling unmotivated and sluggish and needed a way to kind of figure out my next move. And then eventually just kind of hits. The best news I can report now is in the last couple of weeks, I just won a book award. And so that really rejuvenated, the process and able to market it again. So you're always able to market. It just may go in cycles.
That's wonderful. Congratulations on the book award. That is so great. So can you talk about, how did you apply for this book award? How did you come across it?
Yeah. So book awards, that's a whole nother, could spend a whole podcast discussion on that. But basically, there are plenty of book award programs out there. You do have to pay a fee to enter. I think all of them. I haven't seen any that you don't. And of course, they cover a wide range of genres. And what happened was, my publisher chose, I think, about 3 that he submitted the book. We're still waiting for those results. A lot of them are a very long lead time. He applied maybe 2-3 months ago, and we won't hear till the spring or even the summer. So it could be a year till you hear back.
Wow.
And then there were about 3 that I applied to myself. This one that I won was from the Nonfiction Authors Association. So very, very niche. And it kind of gives you a boost, kind of rejuvenates your book marketing and your energy. And it's kind of life-changing, It's a goal that's the other thing I want to bring up that I think is challenging for authors and all writers. We're always moving the target of our goals. And sometimes we're just too hard on ourselves.
Mm. Yes. Yes. I would agree with that. 100%. 100%. So that is amazing that you got the book award. That's fantastic. And I would think too, having an award or something like that, or even having your book nominated for one, which can happen as well, it increases that credibility, particularly with nonfiction. So have you found that you've been able to utilize that a lot to increase marketing, or has that helped you be able to market your book a little bit easier?
Yes, well, it's still very new, but being able to apply to speaking engagements, podcasts, and such. And then also, as a freelance journalist as well, when I pitch articles, that is, I think, a huge leg up, because when editors are looking to assign when they see something like, oh, this is an award-winning author that wants to write this piece, I think that's going to be really beneficial to me. So that's really exciting. And it's something that it doesn't go away. I was
Yeah.
thinking about it because I was a little hard on myself about book sales, because again, it's all relative. And I was always moving the needle. Like I actually met my original goal, but then I was like, oh, I want more. I want more. And now that never ends, right? You could spend your whole life saying, I want more sales. But once you're an award-winning author or a best-selling author, which I'm not that yet, but the award might help that, who knows? But once you're that, you're always that. And so suggestion is definitely apply to book awards. And like I said, there's so many out there. And just kind of do it soon after you're published, because a lot of them have guidelines as far as when your published date is.
Cool. That's great advice. And as far as finding the awards in that, is it looking through different author book associations, or is it just Googling? What's your recommendation for finding some of these awards?
Yeah, I think Google's really the best. And then I definitely get some writing email from different people. I can't think of the names off the top of my head. Sometimes they put them together, but I think just Googling. I don't know that there's a book out there that has it. I think Google's probably your best friend, really. And then, of course, if it's fiction versus nonfiction, Google your genre, see what's going on. And also, I do recommend getting involved with your genre writing group, because I've really made a lot of connections and learned a tremendous from a couple of those out there.
That's wonderful. That's great advice. Now, you've talked a little bit about that being hard on yourself. And I know I've experienced that as well, was with my second book. And I spent a bit of money on marketing, and I kind of went a lot more all in than I did with my first book. But the launch was not at all what I was expecting. It was, if anything, worse. And I couldn't understand it because I was so proud of my second book. And so I definitely understand that feeling of, being disappointed and a bit hard on yourself because you're not getting the attention that you aspire to right off the bat. How did you work through that? What's your advice for any author going through that? Because we can go through that at any point in our career, of course.
Yeah, I think what I had to learn is go back to, why did I do this in the first place? And my husband was very good at reminding me. He said, why are you obsessing over how many book sales when that was never your goal? And so I think what happens is we sometimes getting involved in too many webinars and listening to too many other people can get in our head. Another kind of path that I started to go down, and I had to quickly pull back, was this idea of a lot of people build a business around their book, and that works for some people. I had to go through this process of realizing that I am not a salesperson, right? I'm not really interested in being a business person around a brand. I'm also not interested in being an influencer like some people are very successfully. What I love, and as you probably gathered when I described the book writing process, what I loved most was the writing. And so I brought myself back to that core, and I'm focusing more now on content marketing and freelance journalism, and using the book as a little bit of a platform for the content. And I'm also really niched down, and I'm like, I decided I just want to write about environmental content now, instead of before I was writing about parenting and health and a little bit more all over the place. So I think with every step, you just have to keep asking yourself, why am I doing this? What do I enjoy most? And how does it work for you? Clearly, if you need to put food on the table, then building a business around your book, there's amazing opportunities to do that, if that's what you want to do. So yeah, I think it's about finding what works for you.
That is so important. I totally believe in that whole idea of remembering your why and always going back to your why, so you don't get lost in comparisonitis or imposter syndrome or that disappointment because your book's just not flying off the shelf as much as you want. So if you're enjoying the process, and I think you and I have that in common because I write because I love writing, then that's what matters most. And it's a bonus if your book ends up in somebody's hands. That's always, fantastic.
I was going to say, anytime you get the feedback too, those gems where someone says, oh, I really enjoyed you just save it and savor it, because that's the whole point, right? As writers, we want to try to make a difference, influence somebody.
Absolutely. And so you were saying that you don't really have a desire to create a business or anything around your book. You enjoy writing about this topic and everything. Yet you do have the Ecohappiness project. Well, I've seen that on your website, and that can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. So I am happy I did that branding around it. I have two websites. I have like my freelance, which is sandyschwartz.com, and then the brand ecohappinessproject.com. I really describe it more as an information portal at this point. Like I said, I have had ideas to make t-shirts and lessons and trainings and all kinds of other, and it could happen. You never know. Ideas can come later. But I just decided what I really love is the writing. So everything on there involves the intersection of mental health and nature and the benefits of nature for our well-being. And so I have tons of blog posts. I have all my interviews posted up there, lots of podcasts and online summits. So, as I still talk about this topic, it's marketing my book. And that's a topic I'm very passionate about. And it was something I believed that needed to come out into the world. We're dealing with a youth mental health crisis, an adult mental health crisis. We have environmental crisis, and I want people to understand and appreciate the benefits of nature, and so that we can all feel better and we can protect nature and feel better at the same time. So yeah, it's really an information portal. And I just think it worked better housing that separately, but it means I have to manage two websites. So it all depends on how you want to do things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do like that idea, though, that you've kind of got this branding around it. So you can keep it as is and it works really, really well. Or you could always expand upon it at a later date if you felt the need as well. But yeah, so I really like that. What we haven't talked about, though, is what is eco happiness? Like you've touched on it, but I'm just thinking, because it was a new thing for me until we kind of crossed paths. I hadn't thought of it before, but there could be a lot of listeners right now who are like, what are we even talking about? What is eco happiness? So if you can talk a little bit about that.
Right. So I think I mentioned that I was writing a little bit more broadly for a while there, and I was basically digging in deep to the world of positive psychology to address my own stress and anxiety. And I was looking for natural ways, essentially, to reduce stress. And through that research, I was exploring mindfulness, diet, exercise routine, gratitude practice, volunteerism, and all of those different aspects alone in general. There's so many health benefits and science-backed benefits. So what I did is I layered on the nature and environmental lens of looking at mindfulness, looking at creative arts, looking at volunteerism. And that's really what I feel like I was bringing into the world that was unique, because there are all these people doing all this work. Again, they're the practitioners, and I'm the writer, researcher, communicator, bringing it together. And no one had done it yet. We're looking at ways, a mental health toolkit that involves nature. So eco happiness is kind of a name, word I made up. You hear a lot about eco anxiety now, people who are very worried about things like climate change. Instead of writing about all that negativity, because I wanted more positivity in my life, I flipped it and I made it eco happiness. How can nature help us feel happier and calmer?
Ah, I love it. I love it. Nature's definitely my go-to. I have a really little backyard, but my house backs onto a ravine. So we've got lots of beautiful trees and all the native birds you can imagine. And it's beautiful out there. Me just sitting in my little garden space out there. And it really is just very, very small. But it definitely revitalizes, when you're feeling stressed and things like that. So I think it's such an important thing. And I love that you have put a real positive slant on it so that we can kind of step away from the eco anxiety and really invest in that positivity. It's such an interesting niche to me as well. Like I hadn't really thought of it before. It's common sense, but I hadn't thought of it before. So as authors and writers, or anybody really, but people in the creative field, we, of course, have a lot of, come across a lot of challenges. We've talked a little bit about that, those mental blocks that can come up, that imposter syndrome and that self-doubt and comparisonitis. And sometimes there's also those creativity blocks and that come up as well as physical ailments, sitting at our desks or typing or whatnot. So would you have maybe top 3 eco-happiness tips for authors or writers to share with us? Can you think of maybe 3 things that you would maybe recommend we do or consider that could help us?
Yes. And it's really important to add a nature habit into your writing career because it not only does it reduce stress, and it's been proven scientifically, but it also boosts productivity and creativity. So I'm sure a lot of people have the experience where, yeah, you're at your desk inside all day and now you're like trying to write the next paragraph, the line, the chapter, whatever it is. And even, nonfiction writers, we need sometimes, we do some storytelling, we need some creativity. You just hit a roadblock. And so number 1, get outside, go take a walk. For me, I've written so many blog posts in my head on a walk. So a walk or a bike ride. If you're exercising and, you like your treadmill or your stationary bike, there's a way to put it on a balcony or even by a window or sliding glass door and open that up. That is so helpful. And so it's like a double boost because you're getting the physical fitness boost that we know all the study shows good for us. And then also the nature connection. So
Ooh,
that's number 1, get outside.
Cool.
Number 2 is you can actually add a lot to your workspace. So even if you're not going outside, you can have, decorate your office with beautiful imagery, photographs, pictures, maybe your own photographs of nature and, your trips to the beach. Just looking at those images, again, the research shows that also helps us feel calmer, happier, more inspired. So
I hadn't thought of that one. I don't know why, but it's one of those things like the get outside. I've thought of that one. I love that, the nature habit. I hadn't thought of the idea of the imagery in your office. I mean, I love a nice office space, but yeah, I hadn't thought of that, bringing even just those pictures of nature into your space.
yeah, and it could be a screensaver, a video, and then also, nature sounds. I happen to be one that needs silence to work, but plenty of people do enjoy some sort of background music and nature sounds, birds chirping, the creek flowing, or just even putting that on maybe during lunchtime, something where you're really escaping. It's that idea of how we feel when we're on vacation. So we want to bring that into our day. And it's all about connecting to mindfulness as well. We hear a lot about sitting in the corner for 5 minutes a day, meditating. I've tried that. It doesn't really work for me. My mindfulness moments are more like a walk outside. So we have to find what works for us.
That's great. And there is definitely something to be said for the creative energy that comes from nature. It really does fill us in a different way than sitting inside in a room or in an office cubicle or something all the time. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing those. So what is your next project then? Do you have a new project or are you just focusing on the marketing of your book at the moment? Or do you have idea to write a follow-up or what's your thoughts?
So fortunately, this topic is pretty evergreen and is very needed. And, my goal is to just spread the word about it. And so I'm kind of combining my freelance writing with information from the book. For example, right now I'm working on an article for Mother Earth News about Oshabana, which is pressed leaves, pressed flower art. So that's, kind of part of coming out of the creative arts chapter, but digging much deeper into a very specific topic. I'm also working on an article about nature volunteering and the benefits for teens for Your Teen for Parents magazine. So I'm really trying to do as much as I can with taking the little bits and pieces from the book and writing freelance. I also have been working a lot with bobvila.com, which has been really great. And what's cool is that that's like a content marketing gig, but I get byline, I get bylined articles. And so they assign me topics, and a lot of it's the home and garden space or sustainability in the home. And I love it. So I really enjoy kind of broadening into that space and hopefully writing more in that topic as well.
That is so great. Something I haven't touched on and I really want to is because you haven't just written the one book, you've also co-authored a children's book as well, which is Sky's Search for Happiness. So that I would think is a completely different thing than writing a nonfiction book or writing articles. So if you've got time, if you could just talk a little bit about that project as well.
Yes. So that was definitely interesting. So I had this idea that the book Finding Ecohappiness was for parents. Although I have to say, and I've gotten a lot of feedback, it's really for everybody. But as you probably know, when you write a book and you market a book and the publisher, they want to kind of niche down. So it's officially a parenting book. So I really love the idea of having a book that accompanied it that would speak directly to the children. And so I contacted a friend of mine who's a teacher who also has always had the dream of writing and publishing. So I presented kind of the outline and my ideas and my vision and some of the content from the other book. She brought it to life. And then back and forth, we edited it together. And then we worked with an illustrator as well. It was a very, very hard process. His books they seem like they would be easy, but that was very difficult. We also tried to get a publisher and we had a lot of close calls. It never worked out. And we ended up self-publishing. So I learned a lot. I don't know that I will be, in the children's book business anytime soon, but I'm really proud of that book. And I hope more people will grab it because it's so important for kids to have, a way to talk about their emotions. And then this also provides a fun solution, a healthy and fun solution to their, this little girl in the beginning is sad. So whether they're sad or they're anxious, they're fearful. And it talks about just going outside and doing these amazing nature activities. And that, something as simple as that could boost a child's mood. So yeah, it was a learning experience. And here, I'll show you the covers.
It is so cute. So cute. Oh my gosh. I don't know how much marketing you put into that particular book, but it would be very different again than your Finding Ecohappiness book. Have you put much marketing into the children's book?
Yeah, well, I think with marketing, my big tip too my lesson learned is that we want to try to do everything and we hear what other people are doing. And I did try some things and I didn't love, I wasn't comfortable with. And so what I'm comfortable a lot with is like the online summits, the podcasting and writing. I am not really, going to be going out into schools and giving book talks. My co-author does because she's a teacher. And I think that's really something authors don't really realize. We all want to write. And then when it comes time to market it, a lot of authors are introverts and a lot of authors are not interested in running around and having such intense schedules. So do what makes you happy as well, but also try new things.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think that's so great that you branched out and you tried this children's book. You found that maybe for the moment, it's not for you. It's maybe not your passion that you want to continue down. But I think it's really important that we do sometimes try these other things because it can surprise us. And the learning, I'm sure, because I'm a indie published author as well. So the learning curve for that is pretty high. But I think even as a traditionally published author, having that background knowledge of some of those things behind the scenes would be really beneficial for you. And so that learning that you've got, I'm sure you'll be able to carry with you in future projects as well.
Yes, definitely. If I ever do decide to publish, even if it's more like an ebook or something or a workbook in the future, because I've toyed around with that based on finding eco-happiness. Yeah, now I know. I learned so much. And the other thing I want to also point out on the website, I mentioned there's lots of resources. And there's also, we took the children's book and the illustrator suggested she just strip out the color. And so we also sell it on Amazon as a coloring book, which is really cool. Yeah. Yeah. So it makes a great gift.
Yeah, that is a really cool idea. I hadn't thought of being able to do that before, but that is a fantastic idea for maybe other people listening to this who have written children's books and maybe their illustrator would be kind enough to consider that as well. That is great. I love that. Really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate chatting with you today. I would love if you could just share again how everybody can connect with you and find your books.
Yes. So head over to ecohappinessproject.com, and that's where you'll find everything about the books. And you can actually click from there to my other site, but I'll give that site as well, sandyschwartz.com. And that's where my freelance work is. And also, I should premiere the fact that I am starting my own podcast. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And it's called the Environmental Writing Podcast.
Oh,
And if you go to sandyschwartz.com, I have a tab for that, and my trailer is up. But it was really neat because, like I said, my passion really is environmental writing. And so the fact that I, have had these different buckets of writing and experiences, I'm really excited to share that with folks and interview other people that are in that world. So next
exciting.
project, I guess.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, congratulations on starting that. That just sounds amazing. And yeah, from my experience, podcasting is so much fun. So you will love it. You will love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today's episode, Sandi. I've so loved chatting with you. And I'll be making sure to put all those links, including to your podcast as well, in the show notes as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Takeaways from today's show. 1. When writing a book, it can help to break it down into smaller pieces, like imagining each chapter as a blog post article. 2. Marketing is an ongoing process. It doesn't end with a book launch. 3. Consider applying to book awards to build credibility. You can find them by Googling or by getting involved in writing groups suited to your genre. 4. When making decisions around your author business, always keep in mind your why. Why did you write this book? 5. Adding a nature habit into your writing career can reduce stress and boost creativity and productivity. 6. Sandi's #1 eco-happiness tip is just to get outside. 7. Consider bringing the outside inside by dressing up your working space with pictures and images of nature to help you feel calmer, happier, and more inspired. And 8. Find ways to add nature sounds into your writing routine, whether you listen to birdsong or running water sounds while you write or during your breaks. So I hope Sandi has inspired you to include eco-happiness as a part of your writing routine. Make sure to check out Sandi's websites for more information about eco-happiness and her books, and keep an eye out for her environmental writing podcast releasing in January. Thank you again for tuning in, my lovelies. Just a reminder that Alchemy for Authors will be changing to a fortnightly format from here on. So the next episode will be dropping on January 2nd, 2023. Until then, though, have an amazing festive break and a happy new year.